wait a minute. I've got the wrong fucking script here. I did like an Anchorman thing, you know, when they changed the teleprompt. Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Yeah. My name's fucking Brick Beshard.
Hello, everyone, and here we are. Another day, another episode of Not Another Whiskey Podcast. Welcome, everyone. We have popped the cork on a bottle, poured ourselves a wee dram, and we're ready to get the show on the road today. I'm Mitch Beshard, your co-host, and I'm joined, as usual, by the man who some say that has a palate as good as all the whiskey nerds in the world combined. Others say he's got such a sensitive nose that he can smell a fresh bottle of whiskey being popped from 1,000 feet away. I just like to call him Daz.
That's an introduction, isn't it? Usually I just get told I've got a massive nose, and that's it. It's not good at anything. But that's great. This week we are going to dig into the world of whiskey pubs. Not whiskey bars, whiskey pubs. Something very, very close to our heart. And I'm sure that most of you who are listening have in your life at some point, you know, been into that kind of pub where you've just got a beautiful wall of bottled whiskey behind it. Probably a nice few cask ale pumps in the front. Big friendly person stood behind that bar, you know, welcoming you in and trying to help you navigate this wonderful world of whiskey. And you know, we in episode 4, we did look at whiskey bars, didn't we? We actually kind of covered off things like the Black Rock as a great example, your modern whiskey pub / bar. But today we're going to go down those more traditional routes and have a wee dig about and maybe speak to a couple of people from some of these places as well. So yeah, man, it's all about the hospitality. It's all about what's behind the bar, not necessarily about how shiny the sign is outside and what type of tunes are playing on the speaker system and things like that, or the jukebox inside, you know, Mitch?
Indeed, mate, indeed. And, you know, going back to what you're saying, we did talk about this in episode 4, and I was having a little listen to that today with our good friend Baz Wilson, and it's pretty funny stuff that's on there. So if you haven't checked out that episode yet, go back, have a listen to it. Funniest part is the sponsor, Fanny McSporran, that sponsored that show for us. Absolutely.
That was, I would just thank them again for their sponsorship. That was wonderful, yeah.
But anyway, like, on with the show today. So today we've got Paul Mc Donagh from the famous, or I should say the world famous Bon Accord in Glasgow. He's going to give us an inside scoop on what it's like to run one of these bars. He's been doing it for 30 plus years. It is an unbelievable bar. So he's going to give us the inside track, if you like, on what it is to own the Bon Accord. Now, I've got to apologize, Daz, because anyone who listens to this show quite a bit will realize that we are late in putting this episode out. It is now Tuesday morning, and we normally put out on every show out on a Sunday morning. So I'm going to explain to everyone listening why we're a little bit late. Some of you may have watched a little rugby match on Saturday where Scotland absolutely scalped England. I'm going to blame the lateness or the tardiness of this show down to excessive national loyalty and excessive loyalty to the Scottish national drink. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think what you did was very brave. I thought you put in a great performance on Saturday. I think you should be really proud of yourself. And you needed a couple of days off, mate. That's what happens.
Yeah, so I apologize. So basically what I'm saying is I watched the rugby, had a little bit of a hangover on Sunday and didn't get the editing done in time.
Mate.
So we're doing it now.
Let's do it. This is it. This is what it's all about. We don't have to be on time, Mitch.
We kind of, I try and be on time.
You are. Yeah, I'm saying we.
Yeah.
I'm not setting those expectations. That's all I'm saying. Right.
So we talked about the rugby, mate, which I know you watched as well, which was an amazing result for us. But what else have you been up to?
What's been happening? I think since the last time we recorded a proper episode, Burns Night has passed. Is that right?
Mm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we had Andy Weir joined us. And for Burns Night, I was lucky, actually. I went across for the first time. I don't know if you've been to the Malt Whisky Society in Glasgow, the one on Bath Street. Have you been down there?
I haven't yet, actually. I've just been to the one on Queen Street and down in Leith. So,
mate, So cool. Really, really nice. I really enjoyed it. Went down there, had a dinner with Glenn Goyne and Gordon Dundas. Joined us. So we had a chat about that and said, we should do the podcast about the podcast, because he, of course, has Whiskey Unscripted over there himself, looking after Glenn Goyne and Tam Doo and stuff. So the Burns night was really nice. A couple of really good whiskies, actually, that we tried. And I managed to squeeze into the pot still that night as well and see Big Frank. And that was very pleasant.
Nice, mate.
Yeah.
Good night out in Glasgow, which we do talk about with Paul, and we need to sort that out.
Yeah.
A little trip over there for sure. Well, yeah, for my Burns, I went down to England, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it?
Hung out with the Larkfire boys, had a good laugh with them, and then came up the next day. Again, maybe a little bit of excessive Scotch loyalty there going on for the drive back up the road. But yeah, mate. And then, well, Speyside as well. I hung out in Speyside after you left me all by myself. Got to some more crazy stuff up there. But yeah, apart from that, mate, I haven't actually been up to that much, to be honest with you. A lot of planning for the business. It's starting to get really busy now. And, I'm working to that point where summer's feels like it's coming. It's just around the corner. So just been doing a lot of slave to the laptop stuff,
Nice. I'll tell you what I did do through the week. I went in to see Cam at the Balmoral, and I hadn't been in since the Macallan bottle keep was put in there. Have you? You've been in recently?
I haven't been in for a while, actually, mate.
Yeah. No. So I went in just the other night, and it was lovely. It was really nice. The Macallan stuff looks great. They've got a 40-year-old behind the bar. I think they're on their 5th or 6th bottle or something like that. He was saying they're getting through it. So I'd imagine on Saturday night they might have got through a few more, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
After the rugby, there would have been a few celebratory ones. So that was quite nice. So yeah, I've actually been out and about quite a bit. I hit a few of our favourite haunts and things like that, which has been really nice.
Been a bit of a social butterfly, mate.
Well, it's got to be done, of course.
All right. So since the last episode, we didn't really have any news going on. It was pretty dry, but it's kind of like, I think whiskey news is like buses. There's either nothing or there's an absolute shitload of news going on right now, which there is. So we're going to get into the news here. Daz and Mitch's Whiskey News of the Week.
I was in a pub and I got in there at 11 o'clock, the minute it opened, and the barman at the Black Cat in Edinburgh on Row Street is a fantastic pub.
Great bar.
We'll probably talk about it later. Yeah, it's a pub, not a bar. We go in for a toasty, and he's like, "Oh, just my bottle of Lochlea's just arrived." And I was like, "Today's the day, isn't it? It's just been launched." And he was like, "Yep." So I had a sample. I had a taste of that, which was really, really nice. Nice. And I was quite impressed with it. Lovely spicy note, anise, cinnamons, those little fireball chewing gum things you used to get from the ice cream van when you were little.
Oh, yeah. The ones that you can break.
Yeah.
Super hard ones.
Super hard ones, but it was like a sweet cinnamon flavor. I had that, and it was really lovely. I really quite enjoyed it. So the UK's got half of the 7,000 bottles produced. The rest will go to 10 other markets in Europe and North America. It's a non-chill filtered expression, natural colour. The design of the bottle, I didn't realize it was around the tire tracks. I didn't know that because I looked at it and thought, oh, that's like these metal panels that kind of go on distilleries and stuff, these sort of meshed flooring sort of setups. But it is from tires, is it? That's quite interesting. I didn't know that. Malcolm Rennie, who's now finished up and who is now away to Rose Bank, announced the other day, which is interesting. And of course, Lochlea's now headed up by Mr. John Campbell.
Indeed. It's been a weird one, right? Because, they went under the radar for so long, and then now suddenly it's like all the news is coming out about them. So, yeah, it's cool to see another new distillery in Scotland, and great to see another legal release, I suppose you can call it.
Yeah, and I would say it was delicious. Also, most importantly.
Good to hear, mate. Good to hear.
Yes.
On to other new releases that have just come out. One that caught our eye was the Ardbeg Committee release, Fermentation. 13-year-old Ardbeg that's just for the committee only. So you can become a member of the committee just by signing up. You don't have to pay for anything to get on there. And then you get dibs on this. But I think this is all sold out now already. But this is a limited release, as I said, a 13-year-old. And kind of cool story. I really like this, the way they've gone around this, because they talk about the longest fermentation in Ardbeg's history that came around through an accident. So what happened was they were just going through their normal process and the boiler broke down. And as the boiler broke down, they had 6 washbacks filled. So I ended up sitting there for 3 weeks before the boiler was eventually repaired. So this was sitting fermenting for 3 weeks. Now, normally with Ardbeg, it's 72 hours. So that's quite a long fermentation process. So Bill Lumsden at the time absolutely loved this idea because he wanted to experiment with longer fermentation times. And that's where this whole expression of Ardbeg comes out. Kind of cool to see. What I love about this, Baz, is so they finished it in first fill bourbon and PX sherry cask. And the retail price is only £50 for a 13-year-old Ardbeg. I mean, that's insane.
I think the price does seem very reasonable. I do have your sample here. I'd say a massive thank you to Mr. Joe Gunner for that. That's really, really kind of you to give us that. He gave me it on Friday, which is very kind. So we'll get into that, mate, probably in a couple of episodes, I hope. I like the idea about long fermentations. It did used to be more common. One of the things I'm aware of is that at distilleries quite often at the weekends, they would run a longer fermentation, run 55 hours or 60 hours during the week, and then at the weekend, they would let it tick over the sort of 3-day period from sort of Friday afternoon through to Monday morning. So you get slightly longer fermentations, lower temperatures and stuff like that could manage it. So no, it's really cool. I love stuff like that. There's probably not enough of that in Scotch. You see it a lot in American whiskies and world whiskies, but Scotch it seems a wee bit further down the line just in terms of production, The Cairn Distillery have announced their distillery manager, Mary Winters, who... Well, they're ready to go, aren't they, from summer 2022? So we've not got long to wait until the stills get fired up. And it's weird, isn't it? Because we've driven past that quite a few times. You drive past it all the time. And every time you drive past, there's a big, big difference. So she's come over from William Grant's. You must have known her. Yeah, mate. I did quite a few Balvenie tours, and she was the distillery manager. She used to look after Balvenie and Kinninvie. So good experience there going over to the Cairn, and a lot of local knowledge as well. That's brilliant. And then something a little bit closer to our hearts, Mitch. Yeah, a little bit of Fife news, which is kind of cool to see. So there's going to be, the plans have been put in place for a Knock Hill distillery. And Knock Hill is north of Dunfermline, well known for its racing track. So they do quite a lot of car races up there. Touring cars, I think, held up there as a lot of motorbike stuff as well, isn't there? Yeah, a lot of motorbike stuff. I actually went up there and raced a little single-seater a couple of months back. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, they're talking about not the racing track, but up by Knock Hill. They're talking about creating a distillery up there, which is currently a farm. And this is all just planning is in stage right now. It's a family-run farm that currently produces sheep and poultry. That's the way it was written. That's weird, man. Produces sheep and poultry. It's like, so basically they have sheep and chicken, but they've written here, it's like they're producing them, which is odd. Yeah. Anyway, the landowners, apparently they're keen to turn the farm building into a malt distillery, maturation and warehouse and bottling plant, all under one roof. So the plan is for them to do some gin and vodka first, and then while they're doing that, mature some whiskey to obviously get some money in from the gin and vodka. So yeah, exciting. And that's a very local one to where I am right now anyway. All right, Daz. So let's get back to whiskey pubs. Now, we've been in a few of these in our time, right? So what's it you look for when you go into like a good whiskey pub? What's the main boxes that need ticked for you? I like pubs with little nooks and crannies. The type of pub that you can go in and you can have, those little tables. They're not visible from every corner of the place, because you can then sit there, you can have your own company, you can have a good time, and actually you're with who you're with. I always find sometimes with the more modern kind of open places, you don't quite get that vibe. 100%. Do you know, have you been to Bennett's up by the King's Theatre in Edinburgh? Yeah. I haven't been in there for a long time, but yeah, I've been in there. I forget the name of what they call it, but when you walk into the pub, on the very left-hand side, it's just a tiny little nook, and it's actually at the end of the bar. Right. So you wouldn't know it was there. It's totally hidden. The only people that would know it's there is the staff, basically. It's a class little table. It's just one table in this little nook, and then the rest of the pub is it's a beautiful pub. Great whiskey bar as well, and great craft beers and stuff, or cask ales. And yeah, it's amazing, but it's got this little nook, and it's little things like that I absolutely love. It's the character of an old pub. And that comes from a combination of things. I do think it comes from the way it's kind of set up inside, lots of wee nooks and crannies, lots of wee hidden spaces and things like that. And then basically just a really efficient place where you can go get a good drink. You don't have to wait too long. It's quite easy. Do you know what I mean? And you don't need to be like friends with the staff or anything like that. But it's, you know, it's a good vibe. Sometimes it's quite nice when you get like a slightly more experienced bartender, barmaid who's like tells you what's happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're in control. They're in control of what's going on. There's a bit of a different way, isn't there? And I quite like that. There's nothing better than being told to go and sit down. Do you know what I mean? I quite like it.
And you need that, mate.
I do.
You need that in your life.
Yeah. So there's a few places that like, yeah.
I like that kind of coziness that you're talking about as well. I mean, for me, yeah, I think as an ambassador, it was always interesting, right? Because we'd always go to these amazing bars or steakhouses, you know, beautiful restaurants. But for me, just like a good pub with a nice pub feel and a great selection of whiskies has always ticked boxes for me with regards to that. Yeah, I mean, a few in Scotland, just thinking Fiddlers with John up by Drumnadrochit. That's an amazing spot. You know, we've talked about a few in Edinburgh when we're on the Instagram there. So yeah, Cannyman's in Edinburgh. I think, you know, Glasgow's just overwhelmed, I think, with great whiskey pubs.
Obviously, the Pot Still is one that people talk about a lot, and we've got Paul on as well from the Bon Accord, which is right up there, has won tons of awards. Glasgow's good at pubs. It really is good at pubs. What about America, man? You spent a lot of time in the States. Is there the same type of pub?
There is. It's more of an Irish theme though, you know, and it's that kind of. It never felt legit for me when I went over there and went into a pub. They did it, but and some of them did it really well, but it never felt like it did here, because the ones here, they have been around for hundreds of years, or they really do feel like they have anyway. So yeah, I didn't get the same thing. You know, in the US, I just loved going to a dive bar. Give me a dive bar.
Delilah's, like in Chicago.
Places like that,
yeah. There was a good one up in Toronto you must have been to, the Caledonia up in Toronto. Yeah.
I did a tasting once there with Ian Miller.
Right.
And the next day he said to me, the tasting was all about Ian. And then the next day he was like, oh, you did really well talking about Glenfiddich Fire and Cane. I was like, did I? I talked about Glenfiddich? I didn't remember doing any of the tasting. We had been drinking since 10 o'clock in the morning, but apparently I did a really good job, because one of the family members was there as well, and they said I did a good job. So
I've done a tasting there once. It was with Highland Park, and it was really good. It was a good taste, and it's owned by a Scottish couple, right?
Yeah. That
is probably the closest thing I've felt in North America to a proper pub that I recognize as a pub.
Yeah, I'd give you that one for sure. Well, speaking about that, should we get Paul on, see what he sent it?
Yeah, let's get Paul on. It's Paul from the Bon Accord, one of the great whiskey pubs. And he's got a lot of great insights, doesn't he, into the philosophy of life as a publican and what it means to run a great pub, and the selection as well.
That's a great way of putting it. So we Daz and I sat down with Paul earlier on today, and this is what he was saying. Delighted to be joined by Daz and I's good friend, Paul Mc Donagh, who runs the Bon Accord over in Glasgow, one of the most famous whiskey bars in the world. Paul, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks very much, guys.
Nice to see you. It's funny, actually. I was working over at White Mackay there for 4 or 5 years, and this is a horrible thing to say, Paul, but I think I've had more lunches in your pub than I've had whiskies. Unfortunately,
yeah, you probably have more chips than drams.
That's a disgraceful stat. I need to sort that out.
That is bad, Daz. We need to go over there and sort that out soon.
I'd love to prop up the bar there. It'd be class. Yeah.
But Paul, it's great that you're on the show, because, you know, Daz and I have both done tastings in your bar at some point, which has always been a pleasure. And you are one of the nicest guys within the on-premise. I mean, I remember coming in as a kind of a young boy within the whiskey industry, running about Glasgow back in my Diageo days, and you always looked after me so well, always so welcoming. And I think that's something with the Bon Accord that you've always had that style to the bar, right? I mean, you have well over, I think it's 600 whiskies behind the bar, and everyone's always welcome to come in and chat about whiskey, and you sit down and spend the time with them.
Yeah, the thing is, I always think it's very important to help people along the way. I never got to where I got myself. I had help from people who are well long retired now that helped me and gave me the wee tips along the road. So, you've got to pass that on. That's the way I look at things. You've got to pass these things on. So it's always a pleasure, and it's always great when I see people getting on in life and doing well for themselves. Like yourselves, you two guys have done very, very well. And it's always nice where I play a small partner or a bigger partner. It's nice. And that's the thing that it motivates me as well. New staff coming in, customers on their whiskey journey. So they're the kind of things that I really, really appreciate. And
you've been at the Bon Accord there then since 2000.
Yeah, it was 21 years, 2001. So this is my 21st year. But 35 years in the trade, it's a long, long time. So I've bumped into quite a few people over the years.
I'm sure you have.
I've had a few drams, a few big hitters over the years.
I'm sure you've kicked a few out as well.
No, I sort of leave nicely.
Is that?
Brilliant. So, Paul, for anyone who hasn't been along to the Bon Accord, how would you describe the bar?
Well, so it's a traditional ale house and malt whiskey bar. So we're an ale house, sell a lot of cask conditioned beers, and we've got that malt whiskey range, and it's about 450 to 500 with a queue of whiskey downstairs waiting to come up. So when a bottle might go off, away as another bottle comes up. So there's a queue of whiskey, maybe another 150 bottles downstairs, and it's actually the reason why they're not upstairs is there's no room on the gantry for them. So it's when a bottle comes off, there's a new bottle goes on. We have our core range that we'll keep all the time that are kind of in-demand products, but it's constantly changing all the time. So that's what we do. We do a bit of food, and there's a wee small cocktail menu as well, which we introduced about a couple of years ago, and it's quite nice. People are quite happy with that. But we are predominantly an ale house and malt whiskey bar, and I am a publican, not a restaurateur. What you would class as a typical Glasgow publican. Work hard and play hard.
Fair play. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. How did you end up then at the Bon Accord? I mean, what was I know you were in the industry and you were doing different things, but how did that end up coming about?
Well, I worked with Scottish Newcastle for a good number of years, and I was doing the corporate thing. And it gets to a certain time when you think the corporate thing, you've had enough of it. It tend to be obstacles in your way when you're trying to run the business with like, we can't do that, do this, do that. And I started again. I loved it, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my time with them. And I've got to thank them a lot for that, especially the training I got and a lot of aspects in business training. So I first came to the Bon Accord in 1993, and I just thought, wow, I love this place. Right. So when I had the opportunity to take it in 2001, I just jumped right in there because I've always felt a pub is like a coat. You put it on, it fits you, and it feels really good. And this is what I do. I felt with the Bon Accord, that instant, this is an absolute cracker of a pub. So from 93 to when I finally taken it, it had its highs and its lows as well. So when I taken it was very low. And it's been a whirlwind. It's 21 years, but it doesn't seem like that, And I've always said to people in business, what I'm doing is a marathon, it's not a sprint. I was never, ever, I'm focused on the customer, I'm focused on how the customer wants to come back. Whether it's someone from Munich, excuse me, who's in the pub twice every 2 years, they're still my customer, and I want to see these people come back. And that's where one of the great things about the Bon Accord is, because I've had the longevity in it, people walk back in and it's, hi, great to see you. So they want to come back. And this is why our business keeps going and keeps going. And we keep moving it. But we're constantly trying to better what we do within the business every day. So it's not a case of the brain gets shut down for a day. The brain's on all the time, thinking up new ways to make the business better, to actually improve that experience for the customer. So that's what I'm trying to do all the time.
Because the thing I'm always struck by, and the thing I love about it's like you say, it's a proper pub. You know what I mean? You can go in, you can have half a nip of blend, a wee half a pint, and you're happy, and you'll be well looked after. You were just chatting before we went live. You could also come in and drink a Port Ellen on the rocks. That's no problem as well. You know, and it's like it's that range, and it's not just about the everyday malts. It's not just about the limited edition malts. It's about the whole thing, isn't it? It's about the whole culture of whiskey. Is something that you guys, I think, embrace brilliantly.
Well, this is the thing. So there's a lot of people coming here learning about whiskey. So there's 5 whiskey clubs in this pub, right? 5 that meet every month, and there's 20 to 30 people. The meetings, these have been along. You've seen how it works. These clubs are going strong. The Bon Accord Malt Whisky Society has been running for the next 16 years next month, which is absolutely fantastic. And these guys have been coming along, ladies and gents have been coming along all that time. They're now whiskey experts. If you're sitting there at a whiskey tasting for all the months, all the years, you become a whiskey expert. And I'm then sit and talk to them about how, the group of friends round with a few bottles, they're actually doing whiskey tastings with their friends in their house. And that's really, really nice. See, when you actually hear the follow-up of the story. Now, if you're a rep with a company, you don't always hear that follow-up story. But because I'm in the pub, I hear that story. I'm getting that more feedback, which is very, very nice. But one of the ones I'll say to you guys is, talk about pubs, and you can have the best products, you can have absolutely fantastic stuff, but if you don't have a safe environment, you can forget it, right? You can absolutely forget it, because that is a key element in any business. You've got to have safety for your staff, safety for your customers. Now, I've won 57 awards in the last 21 years, multiple awards for everything you can possibly think about, beers, whiskey, staff, whatever. But the one that I treasure the most is the one I got from the Scottish Government, and that was for the best bar none, and that was for safety. So that's given through the police, the fire service, and the ambulance. And I was presented with this award for the best in Scotland. And that, for me, meant more than all the whiskey ones, all the beer ones, because first and foremost, I'm a publican, right? And I'm create a safe environment for my customers to come in, whether they're from 200 yards down the road or 2,000 miles away. It's a safe environment. And that's a very, very crucial thing that an awful lot of people don't, or what they'll do is throw 2 door stewards on the door and think they've got a safe environment. They don't have a safe environment with 2 door stewards. It's creating that safe environment for my customers and for my staff. And that's one of the things for me I'm very proud of, right? And you mentioned earlier on about kicking people out. No, but reality is, if you get a safe environment, you've sometimes got to persuade people to leave the premises. But the thing is do it right away rather than when it starts. So that's, for me, is a big thing in the trade.
Brilliant. I think that's always the thing that I've associated with the Bon Accord. It's somewhere where you can go in, just no matter where you're from. You know, it's like some bars, sometimes you have to be a local to go and enjoy a drink there. You never get that sense with the Bon Accord. It's like everyone's welcome. You come in and it's if you're just starting your whiskey journey, it's intimidating with the 600 bottles that you've got there, but there's always someone to help people on that journey, right? And I think what I want to ask you, Paul, is going back to 2001 when you took over the bar. I mean, that point in time, most pubs are doing cocktails. They're talking about flavored vodkas. You obviously took a bit of a gamble on putting all these whiskeys behind the bar. So that must have come from, obviously, your passion for whiskey. Talk us through that. How is that whole mindset of taking this gamble and putting so many whiskeys behind the bar back in that day and age?
Well, basically what it was, Mitch, obviously I'd 15 years in the trade before I came into the Bon Accord, so I was very, very well versed on whiskey. And I said earlier on that when I worked for a company, you could only have a certain amount of whiskey on your bar, maybe 10 whiskies. So when I take over this place and I bought the stock, there was only 2 malt whiskies on the gantry, right? Now, for me, a pub is about conversation. You go to meet people. You're going to enjoy yourself in a safe environment. Now, the pub was an ale house, and it was known as a specialist ale house. But when I taken over, it was down in the dumps. It had been put out the Good Beer Guide because of the quality. So my first thing I did within the first couple of months was resurrected the Bon Accord as an ale house. Okay, so the ale drinkers would start coming back. So that was increasing my customer base. Now, if you've got a pint of ale in your hand or a half pint of ale in your hand, that's a conversation in your hand. You're talking about where it came from, what kind of hops it's got, that type of thing. So the next, you're talking to the person or the people next to you about the different beers. Now, whiskey, a malt whiskey in your hand is the exact same thing. It's a conversation in a glass. It makes people join together, makes strangers talk to each other about what one they like, where they've been, what they do like. So to me, it was a no-brainer. So it wasn't about doing something, putting a DJ or a karaoke on or anything like that. You can do it with your products if you do it correct, do the right products, right? So what I did was I didn't go out and buy 400 or 500 malt whiskies. That's not possible to create what I've got there. It takes a long, long time. So what basically I did was I brought in probably about 35 malts that were readily available at the time, and I brought them in and made a statement with that, okay? A statement that now this has got a malt whiskey offering, but at the same time as well, financially, you can't go out and buy all that, especially if you've got a business that's doing well and you're trying to bring it up. So what I was doing was month by month, bringing more whiskey in, but also at the time, I would do whiskey tastings. And I would have maybe 10 people at the whiskey tasting. So I would use a bottle of whiskey for the tasting and another half bottle went in the gantry. So instead of 40 bottles, I had 41 bottles. I increased it through that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I was getting half the bottle sold right away, and the other half bottle was up in the gantry for people to try it. Like that. So just slowly but surely. And I think it was when I got to about 120 bottles, maybe year 2 or so, 120 bottles, I then felt I am an ale house and a malt whiskey bar, because I felt as if I had a range that was big enough to go. And I remember having a discussion with my late stepfather about how I was going to step up. I was going to step up my range in what I've got in malt whiskey in my bar. And I says to him, you know, I've never spent more than £1,000 in a bottle of whiskey, and I'm going to do it. This is a year I'm going to do it. So I think it was year 4 into my thing. I'm going to step up. So I did. I bought a Black Bull more. It cost me 3,000. So I just didn't go to 1,000. I went because I couldn't resist it with the opportunity. But technically, and it's a good friend of mine, Andrew Torrance, who talked me into it. I don't know if you know Andrew, but Andrew kind of talked me into it. But I must admit, it was one of the finest whiskies I'd ever tried at a particular time. I've since sold 3 or 4 bottles over the bar over the period of time. But it was a whole thing because of the length of time. And I think probably year 7 years into it, I really felt really comfortable when I was talking to different people within the industry about what I had to offer. When a rep walked in and says, "Where did you get that? I've never seen that." You know what I mean? You feel as if, right, I've got something special. Although I knew what I was doing, but it's when other people within the trade come in and say, "Wow, I've never seen that one before. I've heard about that. I've seen that in a brochure or whatever." They were the nice things that it gives you that you kind of, right, okay, I'm getting things right. Then you get the accolades in the trade, right? And again, I've always says every award that we've won in here is for the staff, but also very importantly is the customers, because the customers love being in, proud of their bar, absolutely love the fact that they're in the Bon Accord. You know what I mean? That's their pub. Bring their family, bring their friends. So that's a really, really nice thing.
And see on that journey, and it's funny you mentioned Andrew. I work with Andrew on Fable, and you know, he's a persuasive man, and he'll be listening as well. So I'm sure he'll appreciate that. But you must have travelled about quite a lot at various distilleries and through the regions and all that kind of stuff. You must have a a few trips under your belt out to these distilleries.
Yeah, I've done all the distilleries. Technically, the distilleries that I really want to, bar maybe one or two. I've travelled abroad quite a bit for whiskey festivals and all that, which I really enjoy because it's nice. It's nice to go to the places where the people come here. So we went over to New York for the Whiskey Festival a good few years ago, and a lot of the Canadian boys come down for the festival and met up. We all met up for drinks and all that, and it was really, really nice to see people on their home turf. I really appreciate that. My last main trip was Singapore. A friend of mine opened a bar in Singapore, and he came here and worked with me for about a couple of weeks. Then went over and opened his bar in Singapore, and I went over 3 months after he opened, went down to his bar, got a half and a half, or a half and a half. I was training his staff, right? And I'd taken a picture of myself outside his bar, right? And I sent it to him and says, "Do you fancy a dram?" He didn't know I was in Singapore, right? So you can imagine, right? But I must admit, the red carpet went out big style, right? Because after I did that, I then says on Facebook or whatever, Twitter, whatever, that I was in Singapore, and the amount of people that came, invited for dinners and all sorts of things, and it was all people who'd been in the Bon Accord over the years, and because I was in their town, they wanted to look after me and all that. And you know what it's like when you get that bit of hospitality, when people are looking after you. It's quite humbling sometimes, you know. I went to Toronto and for the Whiskey Festival in Toronto, and a boy came in and was my driver for a week. It was just, I'm going, no, I'll take you here. And you know, it really is very, very nice, but it's humbling.
Yeah.
It really is humbling.
It's an odd feeling, isn't it? When you're tuned to just look after people. That's what you do all the time, and it's your job to make people feel comfortable and things. And when it's on the shoe is on the other foot, it's actually quite awkward because you're just not used to being in that position.
Well, we walked into a bar in Singapore, and I was drinking really nice whiskey. The guy kept saying, try this one. And I remember the last one I had was a 32-year-old Jura, right? So I got up to pay the bill, and the guy says, no, it's free. I went, no, I'm drinking really nice whiskey. No, I insist. He's going on and on and on. I insist it's free. And I says, that's great. So I throws a couple of £100 to his staff as a tip, just to, you're doing something right. And I back to the table, and my friend says, was that on the house? I says, He says, I've drank in here for years and he's never bought me a drink once. Quite nice. You know,
that's it.
That's the license trade. That's the trade. When people, you look after people, people look after you. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it. And that's why I'm still doing it.
So out of all the whiskey experiences that you've had, Paul, if you had to pick one that's like my all-time favourite whiskey experience, what would it be?
Glenfiddich. I was invited by Ian Miller to the Spirit of Speyside dinner. And we sat there, a lot of the high rollers had come in from Switzerland and Russia and all that. And we sat at dinner, and all the drams had come out of casks that day and were on the table. Never left the distillery. And I'm pretty sure it was a 1958. And it was like coal, as black as coal, this Glenfiddich. And sitting at the fire upstairs, having a wee dram, it was quite an experience. Mr. Mark Thompson invited me along, that's what it was. Ian was hosting the dinner. And it was a really, really, really nice experience. Now, I've had the great experiences all over and been looked after as a VIP guest and all that. But I think that night in particular, and it was the company you were sitting in. These people were wealthy people, right? Knew their whiskey big style, right? But whiskey's a great leveler. Whether you're a binman or you own Google, you know, sitting there with a dram, we're all very equal, I always feel. And there's nobody's higher than anybody else because we're all sitting there having a dram and enjoying it. But that was one that I really did enjoy. And two absolute wonderful guys. And Mr. Miller, I've known him for a good number of years and I've always gone very, very well with him. I'm pretty sure you know him very well yourself.
He's a bit of a legend. Yeah, we actually had him on the show.
Did you? Right.
We had him on the show. When was that, Daz? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Or last week, actually. We recorded him for an episode. So,
and he was sitting drinking another whiskey from a cask. You know, I don't think I think that's just his standard whiskey now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know the running joke, Paul, right? You know he's retired now.
Yeah.
So it's like he built this summer house outside his house, and that is the new Glenfiddich warehouse because he's got that much stock in it. You know what I mean?
Well, he's been a guest at the Glasgow Whisky Festival, me, Martin, Julie, and he's brought some really nice, interesting stuff along to the VIP night. So he's always welcome. That's for sure. It's always welcome. Aye. So things are starting to pick up here, which is quite nice. It's been a real hard slog, but you know, my cup's always half full. I'm recruiting more staff, bringing more staff in before I need them, as I always do. Make sure they're there when they're needed.
Are you just looking for a good attitude and a nice manner?
It's a manner. It's about somebody that's got that about them, that can hold that conversation. You know what I mean? I say to people, and this boy was told this morning, every single person who works for me told us the exact same thing. If you can't hold a 16-second conversation, that's how long it takes to pour a pint. Right? You walk into pubs and the member of staff stands in front of you, pulls a pint, and looks away. Doesn't stand and say, have you a nice day, where have you been, da, da, da. 16 seconds. If you can't hold that 16-second conversation, you should not be behind the bar. Right? Because it's harder to not have a conversation, harder to actually look away.
So, Daz, you'd be fucked then, mate. You're not going to get a job.
I'm actually thinking, Mitch, you can hold a 16 conversation, but you normally get angry halfway through it.
Like going around.
Mitch can fall out with someone twice in 16 seconds, Paul.
Get them to leave twice just because of the anger in my chat.
Listen, guys, an absolute pleasure. I'll need to get on with this.
Paul, it's great having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man. Daz and I will definitely be through to Glasgow soon. We'll pop in for a couple of drams. Make sure you're there. So yeah, we can get involved in some Bon Accord action.
No problem, Paul. Top guys. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, Paul.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Great to chat to Paul there. I have got so much time for that guy. I remember coming back from the US actually, and I hadn't seen Paul for about 10 years. I walked in, this isn't a word of a lie, sat at the bar, had lunch while he was working, and he not only comped my lunch, but I was looking at a bottle that he had made. It was for the Independent Bars of Scotland. I was like, oh, that's really cool. He then proceeded to just give me a bottle. And he was like, there you go, take that away. I hadn't seen the guy for like 10 years and, gave me a free lunch and a free bottle of whiskey. Unbelievable.
Brilliant. Yeah. No, I do. I've done a few tastings over the years there. One that stands out was a good one. Did a Valhalla one with Highland Park a long time ago for one of the whiskey clubs. And that's the interesting thing about that place. And I didn't realize it until he told us 5 whiskey clubs operating out of the Bon Accord. That's absolutely mental.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know all the other stuff they do on top of that. I mean, they're busy guys.
Now it's time for some interesting whiskey facts that definitely won't get you any new friends on a Friday or Saturday night while standing in a bar. Might work on a Monday or Tuesday though. All right, so what we thought we'd do today is facts, not so much facts, but more hints and tips for when you visit one of these whiskey bars, right? Obviously, first one, and this is, I think, general rule, is just tip the staff. Give them a wee tip.
That's fair.
These guys are working hard, especially right now.
It's not our culture necessarily in the UK, is it?
No, but you get good service if they're knowledgeable about whiskey and they, recommend something to you, spend some time with them, give them a wee tip.
Yep. All right. Okay. I'm going to give you a tip. Don't ask for the oldest whiskey.
So annoying.
That is quite annoying, isn't it? And it's usually for the wrong reasons. I understand why you would ask for it. What is your oldest whiskey? Perhaps is a good one to ask. Out of interest, what where does it start and stop? Fine, but asking for the oldest whiskey is kind of like it's the wrong question, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. My one, simple, honest. Don't ask for a vodka and soda.
Oh, vodka soda's all right.
Yeah, but not when you've got 500 whiskies in front of you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'll give you that. The whiskey list is always really helpful, isn't it?
Whiskey list is a great one. I think if you ask for a whiskey list at a bar like that, then they think you're pretty serious about whiskey.
Do you reckon?
Well, so here's the thing, right? Here's my theory on this, because if you look at a back bar, you can't always see what all the whiskeys have. Paul just said it in his interview, right? He's got, what did he say, 400 on the back bar and then another 150 downstairs that are waiting to come up. So he's got a massive whiskey list there. You're not necessarily going to see all the whiskeys just by looking at the back bar. If you ask for the whiskey list, the bar staff there are like, oh, this guy's serious. He wants to actually, consume and take in what we have here behind the bar.
Yeah, no, I get that. So this is where I would challenge that and say what I do all the time. I so often just go with a recommendation from the staff. Yeah,
it's another great shout. It's partly because you can't read as well, right?
Yeah, that's a slight problem. Yeah, but I know I like the fact that like they're interested, right? Most of the staff in most of these places as well, they're working in a whiskey specialist pub. Rarely they won't be, but I would just often say, well, what do you drink? What do you like? Anything good and that's new or interesting that I should be trying that maybe I haven't tried before, and that I'm usually quite happy with what I get, to be honest. I'm the easiest customer. Like I like to be told what to have. Do you know what I mean? Even on food, I'll just what have you got?
You do that a lot. There. I've noticed that actually when you go out, you always ask.
Yeah, and I like that because it's like they're then involved in your decision and they can own it, right?
Yeah,
and the great thing is like I'm not going to say no, and very rarely, not obviously there's limits and stuff, but very rarely would I be that bothered about price within reason. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Big spender.
Big bills, I know. Well, I tell you, I went to the Whiskey Society not so long ago. I was waiting for you because you were late, and I had I think, was it a Glenmorangie? I think it was a Glenmorangie. Anyway, I said, I want something chocolatey. And he was like, what kind of price? And I was like, mate, just mid-level is fine. Do you know what I mean? Just what have you got? But like, not ridiculous. It was 15 quid a nip. But it was like a beautiful 18-year-old Glenmorangie sherry cask, beautiful flavour, really, really, really good. And I'm so pleased that I asked for a recommendation because I would never have chosen that whiskey. Do you know what I mean?
I think and that's a good shout doing it in there because there's so many whiskies. There's so many, we may know the distillery from there, but we don't know the finish that they've done in there or the cask. And it can be so different from your normal liquid you get from that particular distillery. And those guys tend to know their shit there and what they're tasting. So that is a good shout doing it.
There's one. What's the hotel down in Campbelltown?
Oh, it begins with an A.
Yeah, it does. Is it the Archie?
The Archie.
It's the Archie. Yeah, down in Campbelltown is a great whiskey place as well. And we keep saying this, but we're definitely going to do it. We're going to get down there. We're going to go in. And we're going to.
We've got dates in the diary, mate. It's locked in.
But you couldn't remember putting in the diary.
Yeah. So to explain, when we were up in Speyside, we did decide on some dates. We're going down to Campbelltown. And I was looking through my phone the other day. I'm like, the fuck is this? Did we arrange this? I don't remember arranging this.
I don't remember it, that.
Anyway, so I think that wraps up for this week. A little bit on whiskey pubs, a little chat from Paul. And what are we doing next week, Daz?
We are going to go up to Speyside. We're going to go up to the Highlander Inn. We're going to spend some time with our good friend, Mr. Tatsuya-san, who is the owner of the Highlander Inn. So another fabulous whiskey pub. Brilliantly renowned owner as well of two fantastic venues over in Japan as well. So yeah, man, there's a guy with loads of experience, great knowledge, met everybody, blends their own stuff, own independent bottlers. I mean, these guys are right into whiskey.
Yeah, really cool. So we're going to keep on that theme of whiskey pubs. So join us next week, guys, when normal programming will be resumed. I won't be watching. Oh, actually, there is rugby again.
Do you know what I was going to say? See if we beat Wales.
Yeah.
What do we do? We have to phone. I'm going to get Craig in instead of you.
Okay, that's fair enough. Right. Yeah. So it will be Sunday morning again. We promise you, we will stick to our schedule. Until then, may all your whiskies be golden and your whiskey's adventures be prosperous.
Oh, prosperous. That's a big word for a Monday night.
Right? Star Trek, right? Star Trek.
Yeah. Is it from Star Trek?
Live long and prosper.
I don't remember that.